Hi, this is part two, John Solari. We're back here talking to the wonderful, oh, what a gift this is for us to have Nadine Bass on, and along with my co-host, Sharon Farrell. Listen, I want you to talk a little bit on part two before we get into exercises. Some of your heroes you were talking about and what it was like for meeting them.
Well,
Geraldine
started.
Fish.
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. I was pretty young. I had severe learning disabilities, and I was just, the textbook miserable child. That so many artists have these kind of childhoods. And I read this book, The Mutant King, James Dean, when it came out in paperback, and I was a kid, and that book had a huge impression on me, and that's the first time I saw the name Lee Strasberg. And I thought, well, if James Dean made a big deal about finding him, I think I better find him. And then later I had a girlfriend who loved Marilyn Monroe and shared these books with me about her, and there's that name Lee Strasberg in again. I said, I gotta find this guy. And lo and behold, literally I guess it was the day I made it through high school, by the skin of my teeth, I heard Lee Strasberg was in Los Angeles, where I grew up, and I found out where, and I went down there, and that was it. I was accepted into that world, and first you study with some of the other teachers that Lee, at that time when Lee was around, would hand pick and train, so there were a lot of really good teachers teaching his work.
Do you remember who some of them were?
In New York. Oh, sure. I had Dominic DeFazio, who was a really brilliant intellectual man. Hetty Sontag is another one who
Did you know Paul E. Richards in New York?
No. In New York, I had Irma Sondre, and there was Charlie Lawton, and Charlie Lawton is Al Pacino's coach. And
He just passed away. Yeah.
so sad.
Yeah.
He lived so long.
Penny Allen is very talented, his wife.
Penny Allen is great.
She
Penny
really
Allen's
is.
Great actress, and Al's very loyal to her. So for people now that are looking to study, I would say look for Penny Allen if you can find her.
Salome Jens.
Is she still around?
Yes, she's the artistic director now with
I
Lee
loved
Antonio.
her. I loved her. She was great. Anyway, so I'm this
Young little girl
I'm
looking for Lee Strasberg.
I'm nobody from Nowheresville looking for Lee Strasberg. Now my parents were not artists, but they had respect for it, and so I was able to know there was more outside of this godforsaken place I grew up in.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a beach town in Los Angeles, and I knew I wanted to go to New York, and my mother's family was from New York. Went to New York as a kid, and my aunt lived in this high-rise, the same building as Joseph Papp downtown.
Oh.
And we were coming in the door, and the doorman said, may I help you? And I handed him my Barbie case, and I just got in the elevator, and I looked out the window at the Empire State Building, and I said, okay, so as soon as I get out of high school, I'll come back here, and I'll study with Lee Strasberg, and it'll be great. And it pretty much was, except, I didn't live alone. I didn't live in that high-rise, but I felt that respect that everyone had from reading the books about these great artists, and to them, that was the biggest thing.
I'm
so
just
I
dying
carried
to
that.
hear about what Geraldine Page taught you.
Geraldine Page. So when I was growing up, there were two. There was Geraldine Page and there was Julie Harris. Were my two idols. And about, I guess, by third grade, I had it figured out where if I could work up a fever and a stomach ache and tell the teacher I need to go to the nurse by about like 11:15, I'd pace it to Wednesday so I could see if I could stay home through Friday. I wanted to be home by noon because that's when the Ben Hunter movie was on. And so I'd sit in front of the heater and rub the thermometer and get a temperature going when the nurse left the room, and then she'd send me home, and I'd get home in time to watch the Ben Hunter movie. Now, I remember my mother saying Member of the Wedding was this great movie, and she couldn't wait to see it. So, by some coincidence, I had a stomachache that day and got home in time to see the Member of the Wedding. And from then on, every single time the Member of the Wedding was ever on, I had that same headache, stomachache, you know, 24-hour virus, you know, and got home in time to watch the Member of the Wedding.
You are a method actress already.
And that was a movie that really saved my life. I had a very unhappy childhood, and there were learning disabilities that were not talked about at that time, and there was physical abuse, and there was all kinds of things going on peripherally in my life as a child that people talk more about now. But when I was a teenager and studying with Lee, I had effective memories that went back 7 years to when I was 11. People used to laugh and say, "Oh, how could you do an effective memory when you're 11 years old?"
What's an effective memory?
Okay, that's digressing. We'll get to that in a minute.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
But because we'll also get to the time point.
We're still,
a
little girl.
I don't want to talk about myself anymore, other than I know when I watch people talking, I do like to hear their background in the beginning, so that's all the background you need on me. This is what led me to these people and wanting to get to Lee, and that's all that's necessary to say. Julie Harris, Member of the Wedding, was something that really actually probably saved my life at that age. It was a young person with great pain that you normally would never see on The Wonderful World of Disney or anything, you know, or any of the sitcoms. And she had a mammy that was there for her, and because she didn't have anyone in her family that was there for her. It was very much something I related to, and it was a little list that I had going of parts I wanted to play. I wanted to play Anne Frank, and I wanted to play Remember the Wedding and Laura and the Glass Menagerie. And Julie Harris, I did finally work with her when I was a script supervisor, and she was everything you would hope a great artist would be to someone. So kind and nurturing, and besides just watching her be the most professional creature, machine of emotion. Should we stop?
No.
It was a one-woman show that we were doing.
No.
She did a lot of one-woman shows written by Bill Luce for Broadway.
She's not here.
And she won
Is the plumber?
Tonys for all of them. She won
What time are you going to
more Tonys than any other human being.
Incredible.
She won 5 Tonys and then 16
Okay.
as for her body of work, which is unprecedented. And Lee, again, made it possible for actresses that were not cutesy pie and spent 2 hours in wardrobe and makeup to have roles of significance.
Mm-hmm.
Before Lee, there was no, there was no
There
one
was
like
no one that
Julie
was
Harris.
edgy or someone who...
Oh, this is more than edgy. This is someone that had a whole life and a whole story to tell about themselves, like the Julie Harrises and the Shirley Booths and the Geraldine Pages and these people. It wasn't just the pretty wife or the pretty girlfriend or the femme fatale. There was a person, and so I got to work with Julie Harris, and I got to tell her at a certain point at the end of the week. We had a week of rehearsal before we had the week of shooting, and it was her playing Itzhak Dinesen, one of the one-woman shows that Bill Luce wrote for her on Broadway. Bill Luce is another person that you could spend a year with and not have one boring moment. He's a brilliant man who can talk about Shakespeare or anything for his mother wrote The Women, his mother's Claire Booth Lewis. And I got to tell Julie Harris that I used to get this, this tummy ache so that I could watch that movie, and I almost failed Spanish because it was being shown at Filmex, and I couldn't take my Spanish test because I had to go to the screening at Filmex in Century City. And my teacher said, you can't make up your test. And I said, well, I can't not go see that. And the teacher didn't understand that I had to go see Member of the Wedding on the big screen. I never saw it on the big screen. And I just didn't care what happened to my grade. And I was in 12th grade. It was high school. I don't care. But anyway, I told her that if it wasn't for her, I don't know that I would be around. And
What was
did
her
she say?
reaction?
she saw me tearing up, and she started to tear up, and she literally held me like Bernice held Frankie, and we cried.
With that, I'm going to stop for a minute.